We're going to do this?
Yeah. So
Okay.
First, a little bit of context. We did this chat at the European Safe Summit, and Patty then contacted us and said, hey, would you mind doing this for my meetup group in Dublin? And we said, gosh, that would be great. Wouldn't it be even better if this pandemic thing was over so we could actually do it in Dublin and then go have a Guinness? Well, that hasn't turned out so well, unfortunately, but we get to do this really fun meetup, and we're really thankful for the invite to join Australia meetup, our Australia meetup with the Dublin meetup, and folks, as it turns out, from all over the world to come and listen to the Em and Adrienne stand-up show while we talk about migrating off legacy platforms while still delivering value.
Because it's such a funny topic. Sure. Morning Dublin, evening Australia. If you haven't worked it out, I'm Em.
I'm Adrienne.
And we are in Melbourne, Australia today, and it is just after 6 p.m. And as Adrienne said, we're going to talk about migrating off legacy platforms while still delivering value. The talk I still think should have been called The Search for the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
So does your infrastructure, your technology infrastructure, just for context, look something like this? Are things a little run down? Are your ops teams fighting fires all day, every day? Has someone gifted you the big daunting task of getting off your aging legacy, breaking down out of support infrastructure? Got a few security challenges? Any of these things happening in anybody's world? So, if so, my guess is you're in the midst of what I would call a rather political debate about how to fix it, and perhaps more importantly, who pays for it. The way this tends to go is the technology folks say, we need to get off this platform because it's out of support, it's getting more and more unstable, and we can't find anyone who knows how to code in assembly or COBOL or whatever legacy language it's written in. The business says, really? Why would I do anything about this? Why do I care? We could probably just let it be. I mean, let's face it, we all know the technology people just want a new thing. And there's nothing really wrong with the old thing. And in fact, realistically, if the ops people are staying up all night solving problems, isn't that what we pay them for? All this debate is exhausting for everybody involved. Does nothing to foster better relationships between business and technology. I've been on the both sides of this debate, and both are uncomfortable. I've been the business person who I just still to this day can't get my head around why it is the role of the business to pay for technology problems. And I've been a technology person and I had no money. So I needed a business person to fund any and all changes, whether they were business or technology centric. So perhaps instead of show me the money, what we need is to show me the destination. What I found works best in this scenario is where technology leaders take the time to paint the picture. How is it investing in this technology enabler, this upgrade, this migration, this decommissioning going to benefit the business? There should always be an answer to this question. And my feeling is if you take the time to focus on this in your conversation with whoever the business is, you'll find that they're more open to supporting your technology initiatives. I think that it can get forgotten that business folks are business-minded. So they lead multi-million-dollar businesses. They're used to making business decisions. And when they think of things in terms of business benefits. So if there's actually a benefit, and there always is once we get to the crux of it, then they'll be able to see that and it will be worthwhile. The Heath brothers in their book Switch talk about this idea as pointing to the destination. In their book Switch, they use the analogy of an elephant and a rider. And if you are the rider is the metaphor for the brain, for your rational side, and the elephant is a metaphor for your emotional side. And we all know what happens when the rider wants to go one way and the elephant wants to go another. We're all going wherever that elephant wants to go. So pointing to a destination, or what they call destination postcards, helps both the rational and the emotional side on the journey. So take the time, have a conversation, and hopefully this gets you to a good place. And we can agree that a technology upgrade is, or decommissioning or migration is what is required here. And somebody finds some money.
Right, so now we start to think about, okay, how are we going to do this, right? That's obviously the next choice.
Sorry.
Okay, so clearly we should just do a copy paste of pick up everything that is in the current system and move it to the new system, right? All those requirements. The technology folks love this approach because it's really clear. I'm going to move everything that's there to here, no requirements, gathering, no fuss, no muss. Business loves this because they get absolutely everything that they had yesterday, they get going forward. Then I don't know how many folks we've heard that says, gosh, this is the core part of the business. We wouldn't let Agile go anywhere near that. Agile is fragile. We're not doing this in an Agile kind of way. It's too important. We don't trust it. We're going back to waterfall. We're going to build our lovely WBS project schedule and we're going to get on with it because we're just not taking that risk. And then, you know, from a technology perspective, we are going to put our best and brightest on this project because it's so critically important. It's the core business. We're going to carve off a bunch of those people and they're going to go over there and they're going to go solve that problem. Sounds right? Yeah? What you think? I think that's what we should do, right?
I think so.
Or maybe not. Or maybe not. Let's kind of approach that is to break that down as to, well, why not? Coming back to the first part of copy paste, as the ex-peers would say, their phrase is Yagni, you ain't gonna need it. So with just a little bit of analysis throughout all of industry, we've come to understand that not everything in your current system, whether it be the back-end system or somewhere in the middle tier, that not all of it gets used. Not all customer-facing features actually ever get used. So if we just did a little bit of analysis, we could actually start to figure out what is most often get used, what gets less used less frequently. So we can start to make some actual economic decisions about we make this much revenue, it's going to cost us this much to move it. Should we do that? That seems like a good moment just to stop for a minute and just do a little bit of analysis. Waterfall, probably risky, actually, as it turns out, of big bang waterfall changes and trying to wholesale move to a whole new platform, really actually quite risky. We're going to go to SAFe because we want to build incrementally, and SAFe is going to give you a better result. And it kind of, you know, we're doing a SAFe talk and we're SAFe people, so of course we're going to say use SAFe. Not terribly surprising. And then the last part is, if we carve people off to go on this journey to build out this new system, we know that the challenges of branching and merging code, it generates bugs, it causes lots of issues. Imagine you've now just done that with a bunch of people too. You have to reintegrate the people. The people who were on the old legacy platform, what do they do when you've got the new platform? You have to reintegrate them and get them to learn this new platform. It's not exactly what we're thinking about. So we're just thinking about, hey, let's launch some trains. Let's actually launch some trains. And we'll come back to this idea a little bit more as we progress through the talk. Okay, so
what if I told you there was a better way?
What is? Take the blue pill.
So where do we start? Start with an epic writing workshop. If you're not a safe person, think about your epic as your big idea, somebody's big decommissioning initiative, and the epic writing workshop is about bringing together our business and technology people and putting them in front of a whiteboard, a flip chart, a Google Doc, a mural, a Miro, or whatever makes sense in our current world, and have them collaborate and share the ideas behind this initiative. We're really, it's really common for folks to tell us that this is just not needed, right? They understand what needs to be done. We're going to get rid of this thing. We're moving to that thing, and there's not really nothing to talk about. I can't tell you how many times I've had this conversation, and where we end up is I say, do me a favor. Can you put 2 hours in the calendar? Get me the key business leaders and the key technology leaders that know all about this thing and have it down pat. And I'm just going to ask them to fill out the template. And if it takes 10 minutes, that's brilliant. We're done. Not a problem. And if it takes 2 hours and we're still not done, don't be shocked, because that's pretty much how this goes. We really like this because it creates shared understanding. It fosters alignment on outcomes. It provides transparency into the complexity of the solution and the problem. And it informs prioritization. So we start making better decisions. The epic writing, the epic hypothesis statement is probably familiar to many of you. It uses an elevator pitch format that looks a lot like the product positioning statement from Geoffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm. A good trick is actually to start with the business outcome. Instead of starting with the story, start with the business outcome. And think about the decommissioning angle as opposed to the migration angle. So look for a single measurable outcome that is focused on decommissioning. Then think about leading indicators that look at the number of users or interactions reducing on your legacy platform. And if you don't have that data, maybe you need to add a little bit of telemetry to your legacy platform to help with your migration to the new world.
The next thing we would do is, while we have these group of folks collected and we're talking about the outcome of decommission versus migration, we'd actually start to create a solution on a page of we'd have the as-is architecture in the intended go-forward architecture too. We actually call this solution on a page. We teach this to our clients. And we'll start with just starting to draw on a diagram on a board, just some really simple stuff of what is it that's going to get replaced by this move. And I really just want to create a kind of a standard template, and it's probably like a little bit high level of, I'm not down at the class level. I just want to see the big boxes. I want to see where where information is flowing throughout the system. And then I want the technology folks to kind of talk through as we're talking about the epic of saying, we're going to touch this and we're going to move that. So we're really describing the CRUD, right? The create, update, delete of what are we end up creating? What are we going to be deleting? So people can get that mental picture of this is how we're moving, or this is the intended target. So we're also going to just capture some really simple stuff like assumptions and questions, and maybe even some new sequence diagrams of, as we are moving, what's the intended target? And we use the solution on a page not just for this particular epic. We use this pattern in everything that we talk about and create in a backlog for an organization that's adopted SAFe, because it's just a really powerful way in a single one page to start to have the conversation, to align people to the journey of what is about to happen. It's really quite powerful. Okay, so now we've documented everything. We should just go.
Definitely.
Charge. Yeah?
Maybe not.
Or not. This is a big thing, right? This is a big journey. We can't eat that elephant all in one go. So what's the classic thing we do in agility is we break it down. We take this big puzzle and we just start to break it down.
So our favorite technique for breaking things down is Gojko Adzic's impact mapping. I find it plays really well with safe epics. You can position that business outcome statement that we talked about as the goal. And impact mapping works on the idea of taking a goal and then using that to then start to think about the who. So we have a goal, decommission system XYZ by whatever date. So nice, smart goal, as they say. Identify the who, what impact mapping calls the actors, the people whose behaviours needs to change for the goal to be achieved. Always remember, great quote from Jeff Patton. He says, "Your job is not to build software. Your job is to change the world." When we do something, it should create an impact, and those impacts have to do with people changing their behaviours. So some examples here that might apply for your decommissioning epic could be, the people who need to change, or the high volume system users need to stop being high volume system users, and the system builders possibly need to change their behaviours as well. The next thing we look at in impact mapping is how that actor's behaviour needs to change if we're going to achieve the goal. So our whole high volume system users, stop using that system for those transactions, please. System builders, stop extending the legacy system. You need to change your behaviour too. And then impact mapping says, okay, so what are we as an Agile Release Train, a solution train, a delivery organisation, whatever, it doesn't need to be a safe context. What do we need to do? What do we need to deliver to support those impacts? So, if you want to move the high volume users, then you've got to give them an alternative. If you want to stop extending the existing one, you've got to move towards an alternative. So it creates really nice links between the work that the delivery team's going to do and the outcome we're trying to achieve. So we really like this approach for decomposing epics.
And it creates a nice connection to not just the technology organization, but the people who are using it, and they start to understand the journey too.
And how they use it.
Yeah, and how they use it. All right, so next step forward to actually, we're starting to shape the work, we're starting to understand it, we're understanding the users, those high volume transaction users, who are we going after first? Then people just then say, gosh, we'll just go for it. We'll just start building this platform. And we kind of want to advocate for pump the brakes here for a minute. We actually want to test this idea out. Many organizations we've worked with have said, we don't need to build something small to prove out our hypothesis. We have an epic hypothesis statement. We need to prove this out. And organizations say, no, we know how this thing works. The vendor told us it works exactly like this. It works just that way out of the box, are a lot of the statements that we hear from organizations that says, yep, we don't need to do that. We're just going to go right for it. And we want to just come back to the original idea of Eric Ries and the lean startup, where we talk about minimum viable products, and the goal of the minimum viable product is to begin the process of learning, not end it. Unlike a prototype or concept test, an MVP is designed not just answer product design or technical questions. Its goal is to test fundamental business hypotheses. So we have our suggestion, our hypothesis is there will be some key business flows, some key things that you're going to want to practice and actually demonstrate in the new platform. So go do that. Go build those small things that help you build confidence that you're on the right path. So our target here is not a design doc of how to go build this. The goal here is actually something that is working, that we can demonstrate those outcomes. So this is, if those of you familiar with SAFe, this is principle number 3, assume variability, preserve options. We probably have a number of questions of how to go solve some of the design challenges that we have, and we want to actually start building and demonstrating those outcomes. And this, if you're working with a vendor who owns technology platform, it's going into the cloud, for instance, you may not get your actual target environments as a part of this learning journey. You might end up with some sandboxing or a sandbox environment where you're going to demonstrate some stuff out. And we would encourage you to do that before you sign up and say, yep, that's the technology for us, is get that sandbox and kick around some of those design hypotheses, do those trade-offs before you actually make the actual technology choice. Create those science experiments, those hypotheses, and prove them. So if you're doing it in a sandbox, we want to be really clear with, as we're doing these demonstrations and this learnings, which is the most important thing, is that sandbox may go away. We may not, and we may not be able to transition with the learnings or any part of the working system in that sandbox into the target environment. We just want to understand that before we get started. Even if that sandbox goes away, I still have the learnings. We've learned a fair bit, and that's a key part, is the learning of how to interact with that particular technology. Then looking for a win-win approach. A lot of when we've talked to organizations about, hey, we want to do this migration, you take a bunch of folks and you take them away and they go off into a black hole and start working on something, that ultimately limits the amount of capacity the business has to develop new features. And so it doesn't really feel like a win-win approach, right? There's a whole chunk of folks, and the best and brightest ones, that just went off into a closet to go build out this new platform, and they're not building anything that's going to be that we actually get to release. And in fact, it's sometimes it's kind of the worst pattern ever, because the business isn't going to stand still. They're going to want to extend the current platform with new stuff, but now they've got fewer folks to do that with. And whatever you build in the legacy platform, you're going to have to build it again on the new platform. So it's just kind of a really awful place for everybody to be. And so we're looking for the win-win approach. And I like this quote from Mick Kirsten, Project to Product, this book that just came out. He says, the only technical debt work that should be prioritized is the work that increases future flows through the value stream. Tech debt should never be done for the sake of software architecture alone. So my analogy here is standing up a platform for the sake of standing up a platform is, without being able to demonstrate or deliver business results, is really technical debt. And I really want to have organizations avoid that. So we're going to talk about, what do we mean? Like, how do we do this?
So you need to draw a connection, or create a proper connection between the business roadmap. So business roadmap driving the delivery of these migration and decommissioning epics. So you've broken down your enabler epic, your decommissioning migration epic into whatever pieces. You've also got a bunch of business initiatives floating around. So you understand, as you normally would, the business features and their priority. And in every program increment, you are creating a link between the business value and those enablers. So that proposed PI1 there picks up the 4 or 5 foundational elements, you know, install the software, stand it up, turn it on, that sort of thing, and doesn't just create an empty box, creates the first pass of the system with some business functionality on it. And then we can continue to build more business features, and we can continue to build out more enabling features to support the business roadmap. If we can't see a link between the business roadmap and the enabler feature, just let it hang out until that need emerges, and maybe it never does.
Yeah, absolutely. So really what we're trying to do is create a steel thread of building out full stack parts of the new platform while supporting business results and delivering those business results. So we focus on steel thread of all the way from the back end, even if that's in the cloud, the persistence layer, all the way to the GUI layer, of being able to still, as we are swapping out parts of the underlying architecture with this new stuff, we're still maintaining steel thread, we're still executing full stack as we are swapping out the new platform. So it's kind of a really still powerful because we know we still have a working system, we're still delivering business results, and we're taking a responsible approach of moving to our new platform. So we're actually getting ready to do some stuff here. We're going to do some work. We're building out this platform. So you think you know how this thing actually works. You've talked about it, you've documented some stuff, you've got these business flows that we understand are the priority to move to the new platform, and you think it actually works. Maybe. So we like a test-driven development approach here of before we actually start deploying any enabler, before standing up this new system, we'd really actually like to write and make sure that we have the tests that cover the behavior of the current system as it works today. So we're going to write all of those tests, and then we're going to run those tests against the current system today. And we're going to see how many of them actually pass. And this is the eye-opening moment for lots of organizations of how it works doesn't actually work the way you think it works, because you write the test based on your understanding, and then you run it against the legacy system, and stuff doesn't work the way you think it does. But the good news is that now we have a bunch of tests, because we can now start to think about what was right. Was it the test or the actual system behavior? And we can now say either keep the test as is, or the system behavior is correct, and yes, that's the system behavior that we want going forward, and modify the test. And now we've got the test suite that allows us, as we are building out the new system, we've got a bunch of tests that tells us, did we build it the way the old system works or not? And oh, by the way, it's a great time to automate those tests, because you don't want to continue to propagate technical debt of using manual tests as you're standing up your new go forward platforms. So write the tests, write them automated. It's a really great pattern. Now, next thing is we've got some test-driven development. Now it's time to do some work. So we use an object-oriented pattern called the Strangler Pattern. So we have, and you can apply this to any part of your application stack. Where we start off over here, you have the target legacy part that you want to get rid of. And here I'm just showing it as being kind of middle of the application stack. It can really be anywhere. But we want to put a facade above and below the legacy system. And that Strangler facade, some of it's just going to be absolute pass-through, like the black stuff here is just absolute pass-through. The green stuff, though, is as we are starting to move flows to the new parts of the system. So when you first get started, the new green stuff is pretty small. But over the course of time, the legacy stuff starts to dwindle and dwindle and dwindle. And guess what? As we're building it out and we're demonstrating and using the new system, because it's in line, it's in the production system, at some point it'll become apparent that whatever's left over in the legacy system, you actually are not going to spend any time moving it, because the financial return on investment of moving it isn't there, because the revenue coming through the last little bits of the legacy system doesn't justify it. And the business they wrap their heads around that. And it's kind of like, oh, okay, great. So then bang, we're now done. We're now working on the new system, and we clean up and deprecate the Strangler facades. It sounds easier, right? It's easier to draw the picture than actually do it, but that's the pattern that helps you maintain the production, the real-time systems as we're doing this, and avoiding the pattern of a whole new system. And how do you migrate old legacy stuff to new legacy stuff? We have them both working at the same time. So go forward is the balancing approach and the mindset of business and technology leaders working to support each other in technology, being responsible in caring for the underlying infrastructure, and demonstrating that we know how to do this incrementally. It's an incremental approach of keeping the code base healthy while delivering business results. We like that win-win approach.
And the safe lean budget guardrails basically give you the tools to help keep that balance. So if you actually apply this, you guide investments by horizons, and you're going to have a balance that makes it clear that you have to make some investment in decommissioning. If you apply capacity allocation, we can start to see how we're balancing a payback of technical debt against business value. We have the ability to approve significant initiatives. So our epics are going to go through a lightweight business case process, and we're going to have that place for that business benefit to be tested and articulated. And of course, continuous business owner engagement makes sure that the investment in this idea is not a blank check, and the organization can actually see the progress and see that the investment makes sense, or see that this is not the way to continue and pivot as necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. So, reminder on patterns. We want to avoid the carve people off and they're going to work over here on this super special thing. This is just the work that comes to Agile Release Trains. The whole train works on this, and we work on this migration incrementally as we are delivering business results. We're going to do some analysis with regards to what should move and allow the journey of, as we are moving legacy pieces, looking for where's this, at some point, where's the moment in time that we're just not going to move things. And because we work with Agile Release Trains, I don't have to worry about branching and merging of people anymore, because I just work this way now. So we want to avoid all of those patterns. And now this is just our new way of working incrementally, keeping our code base healthy, incrementally moving to new platforms. It's kind of like what we do now with COVID, right? We've all become really good at good hygiene of just washing our hands, right? This is the good hygiene going forward. Funny enough, go into the DevOps handbook, really fascinating quote here. And this is from circa 2014 when the DevOps handbook came out. Both eBay and Google are each on their 5th entire rewrite of the architecture from top to bottom. It's kind of a perpetual state. Once you're kind of finished migrating one technology, you're probably ready to go refresh the next one too. So we're just constantly in this good hygiene mode. That's it. That's us. That's our talk.
Thank you for joining us. Very happy to sit and chat and take questions. If you liked our stories, there are many, many more stories in our books. Tribal Unity, getting from teams to tribes by creating a one-team culture. And the new book, The Art of Avoiding a Train Wreck, practical tips and tricks for launching and operating safe Agile release trains. But yeah, over to you guys.
What questions do you have for us?
I might have a question, guys, just on the, it's kind of going back to before the impact mapping. When you're doing the solution on the page, I was really leaning in to look at the whiteboard to see what was on the whiteboard. But
on the whiteboard, that's really our very confidential information.
I love the idea of assumptions and call outs, but I wonder, do you have any advice on a situation where alternatives might be being presented, where there's, you're talking about the business and technology, maybe might be debating options, but that happens within technology teams too, right? There might be alternative approaches presented. Do you have any advice on that kind of scenario when alternatives are being discussed or compared?
Yes, I think you're talking from a technology choice, yeah?
Yeah, I guess it would be at this stage, if there's a couple of proposed solutions or a couple of proposed approaches.
So a lot of organizations would take up let's write a document and compare them, and I would advocate demonstration of outcomes. Use the exact same pattern from a perspective of there's some things that we don't know how to do, and I'm not looking for the entire journey of go build the whole system in a sandbox, but it's do a bake-off of actually build some stuff in both platforms and demonstrate the learnings and notice some of the baked-in rules that are in both technology platforms. Where do you bump into them, and where do you stub your toes, and where do you have to work around the baked in assumptions that are in the technology. No better way to make a technology choice than to bake off. And it's very transparent, right? It's a technology organization that says, these are the things that we have to learn. This is the laundry list of things that we want to learn. And we're going to demonstrate, we're going to build just lightweight experiments in both technologies and demonstrate those learnings, because it will help make a more informed choice.
If it's more, I don't know, design nuance, so less, big technology argument and more, where does it, how does the data flow or what have you. There's, it's funny, architects draw diagrams all the time, but I'm not sure how often you get architects collaborating around a whiteboard. I look at that picture and I actually remember those three guys, and they'd write and then they'd stop and then they'd talk, and then another one would write and they'd stop and they'd talk. So something, using a collaborative space with those competing minds to actually just get them going, and that was it, like just going, okay, we're going to draw this one, but there's an assumption there and there's a question there, and they're capturing all those things that they want to solve for later.
Yeah, it's powerful to do it as a group of folks as opposed to a single person, and to start with that whiteboard and get going, because the experiments that you probably want to run is going to fall out of that conversation of how do we do this in that technology stack. What's the stuff that we're worried about? What's the stuff that we think that's going to shoot us later?
Question here from Anna: would you time box for investing time effort for comparing both technologies, as they can go for ages? Yes. We're back in seats. Yes. Absolutely. And to what Adrienne said, you've got to know what you're trying to test here, right? So you may create an epic or a feature or a story with really clear outcome acceptance criteria. Use those tools and be really clear about the problem you're trying to solve, and decide how much you're prepared to invest, with that full knowledge that it's going to be throwaway, right?
Or could very well be.
Spike. Yep.
Absolutely.
Spike's good. Yep.
Because now you're being really transparent of Agile. So in our context, say Agile Release Train, they're going to do that work. They're going to demonstrate those outcomes. But that needs to be prioritized. It's going to consume capacity from the release train to demonstrate those outcomes, to build and demonstrate those outcomes. And we want to be eyes wide open about that. So yes, we're not thinking big design documents, big, huge, long cycle to go figure this out. Small experiments. What's the things that we need to know to make that responsible tech choice?
Stunned silence.
Dublin hasn't had enough coffee, and Australia's
ready to go to dinner.
And
working on it. Yeah.
Sleep.
It's time for dinner.
Just one small question on the slide that you had on the when you were showing the enabler epic with the features underneath it, and then the roadmap, the connection between enabler features and the business features. I was just curious, because we haven't got to where I am. We haven't got to the stage where we're using epics, from the manual just yet. And when I see an enabler epic, I'm wondering, would I only expect to see enabler features hanging off that enabler epic? Or could an enabler epic also contain some of the blue boxes too? I'm just wondering, what's the patterns that you guys normally see?
So I think that illustration reflects my experience. I think you see red boxes under blue epics. There's really no reason why you couldn't see blue boxes under red epics, but I think if you, in some ways, I don't ever want to see an enabler epic. What I'm really trying to do here in the nicest way possible is say, can we get rid of all the tech only stuff? And this slide was a way to start to say, okay, I accept you have a big technology initiative, and that's fine, and we've broken it down and we see it. Now we're going to refocus on business value and creating that connection. So it's a little bit of a mirror, I guess, I'm using for this illustration as opposed to a recommendation.
Understood.
And in fact, even as more business epics start to go through and you have this enabler epic, we'd love to just pull as a part of the implementation of the business features of just say, because we've stood up the foundational elements as shown in like PI1 here as a for instance, to say we want to get to the moment in time where the new platform is the only place where we are going to extend, so that every time we build anything that's the blue stuff, the business features, it's just going to be built on the new platform, right? So in essence, we're pulling the implementation pattern out of the red enabler and we're just doing it as a part of building the business feature, right? So whether I actually visualize it as a standalone epic or it's just the implementation pattern of that business feature or business epic, I really kind of just prefer it to be baked into how you're going to deliver the outcome for the business feature or the business epic. And you're just whittling down that enabler epic anyway.
We stumped them.
We did.
I've got one for you.
Yeah.
So you recommend the Strangler approach as opposed to like setting up a brand new platform and migrating gradually, or I'm trying to think of the question. A greenfields environment, basically. Does that make sense? Or were we in a big bang cut over to a new greenfield?
Yep.
The Strangler would be the approach to use?
Yep.
Or anything not big bang.
No, it's, yeah, I'm just trying to muster support for my line of thinking.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's interesting. I think I've worked on a ton of stuff where people have been doing greenfields things, and it just takes so long for the organisation to pivot. So I think Strangler is kind of interesting in terms of how do you move the organisation faster. I think that's kind of part of the appeal. But whether you did that or whether you didn't do that, I think what's driving us, it's that big bang. We'll wake up one morning, stop using this thing and start using that thing, and it's all going to be magic, because it isn't, well, among other things, it isn't magic.
Yeah, and it's hard to reason your way through the migration approach that says we were on that platform, we're going to shut that off and go to the new one. How do you ever get to feature parity?
Yeah.
Because you're going to, it's like, and how do you split out the resource, right? Even if you split half is in legacy, half is in the new stuff, there is years and years and years and years of business features in legacy, and you've got half of the organization that's going to move all of that, plus anything that half of that organization is going to continue to add in the legacy platform. It's like, how do you ever get out of that trap? I don't think the technology folks are thinking, how do you exit? How do you exit but still be responsible in delivering at pace? Because I can't imagine a business leader saying, I'm totally fine if you take half the team and put them off in a corner somewhere and build the greenfield system.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Yeah.
I guess an example we're experiencing now where the big bang approach has been implemented. Unfortunately, the decision was made before I came along, but one of the struggles we have now is we do have users on the new Greenfields platform. There isn't feature parity and they're crying out for those new features. And we know in order to get our remaining customers over there, we're going to have to build those features. But in the meantime, you need to keep those legacy customers happy. So what are you doing? You're updating 2 code bases now, sometimes 3, because you still have to maintain the legacy code base, keep those customers happy. So say the decision's made, you're already there, you've already got the 2 or more code bases now. Any suggestions on how you work around that? Is it?
I suspect you need to be it's a governance issue, right? And it's a question came up when we were talking about this at the conference as well. you know, I absolutely get the customer drive. Obviously know your organization. I understand you're very customer centric, but yeah, at some point you're gonna have to make some decisions, or you're going to be here forever. And you know, if I think about, I think we've known you guys for, you know, 2 years, 3 years, 3 years. Thank you, Mark. And I think you've had this problem the whole time. So, and I think we probably gave you the same advice 3 years ago. And I doubt very much it got better in the last 3 years. Oh, I broke Mark. Sorry, Mark. Yeah, so you know, there is it is very much and I think for you guys in particular, there's a governance piece, but it's the same answer I end up giving everyone. You're going to have to make some hard calls. You're going to have to put governance around how much you extend legacy. And you need to start looking at every one of those extensions as just setting money on fire, because that's what it is, right? And
money and time.
Money and time, right? So you know, it's not that you can't, but you've got to get to a place when you're looking at every single extension to legacy as dead money, and you're really trying to contemplate, is that the right thing to do? I don't feel, from what, you know, and I haven't been close to your organization in a while, but I don't feel like that's the discipline that you guys have, based on what I've seen in the past. Sorry, Paul, no magic.
I really agree with that point. There is no magic here. There's compromises on both sides of this coin. You've got the whole notion of Strangler, which keeps everybody on board, and it's a process, but you carry with you the technical debt of the past, and you carry with you that feature backlog, that overhead. Whereas that clean cutover scenario, it's all clean, it's all fresh, it's all light, and it's fast. But you may not carry everybody along with you.
Well, so the organization that created a bunch of technical debt in the legacy system, guess what you're going to do in the new system too? That lovely greenfield,
Doesn't stay that way.
it's not going to be greenfield for
I
long.
know, it's legacy on day 2.
Right?
Absolutely.
And we haven't fundamentally learned how to leave the campfire cleaner than you found it. Because if you can't architect your way out of the problem that you created, I don't know how you fundamentally have resolved the problem that you are going to create the exact same problem in the greenfield space, and you're going to be right back where you were.
Right. I'm not going to agree with that, because that conflicts with a whole bunch of features that I'm selling. The stuff that we do in the greenfield space, or the architectures that we use, the things like cloud native, microservices, all of that sort of stuff is about being able to instigate change going forward. You know, we've been doing this whole thing of going through decades of, like, a decade goes by, and then some government agency, they go to market and they replace their healthcare system or their transport system or whatever with a monolithic application. And then a decade comes by again and they replacing the same damn system. And we've been doing that over and over again. I can point to clients that we've done this like 4 times, 4 decades of just replacing systems. But we now are moving into a technology-enabled era where we can break that whole pattern, and we can start having these little components that we can say, well, we like that little component over there and it's delivering value, leave it alone for goodness sake. And we can focus on that one over there, which hasn't been delivering value for like the last 6 years, and we can kill it off with a replacement. We can get much more granular and much more agile about how we evolve and maintain these systems. I think we can learn, we can get better. Certainly the underlying technologies enable us to be a whole lot more creative around change and agility. Anyway.
Yeah, there's an offshoot of, or I don't know, a little vignette off the side of this talk that it doesn't sit in it, but we talk about it when we talk about this topic, and you think about the commercial off-the-shelf apps, and there's a whole mindset that comes with that, and there's a whole approach that comes to building those things. You know, you often hear the term, or certainly in this part of the world, I often hear the term fit gap assessment. So the first thing we'll do is we'll take our commercial off-the-shelf magic answer to everything, and we'll check it answers everything that we want. And that fit gap assessment takes a very piecemeal approach. And I'm going to look at the sales screens, and I'm going to work out, oh, here are the differences between the legacy sales screen and the new sales screen. And then I start shoving all my legacy problems into my new greenfields application. And you know, one of the things I like about this sort of pattern we have up here in the Cotswold is we move away from this fit gap and function by function or module by module or whatever they want to call it, in terms of the mindset about building it out and start thinking about that value add.
The outcome, as opposed to the focus is always about continuing to deliver business outcomes and business value, as opposed to the outcome being, I'm going to configure modules, because it's going to leave you in a place where you're going greenfield. You're going to do big bang migration.
Yeah.
I would like to call out your slide where you said that we shouldn't be creating teams for new greenfield projects, because I can confirm that it creates a lot of friction.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
One thing is that the team is created of the greatest and brightest. And what happened, they had a team of really senior people, and they were not collaborating as it was expected, because when you have a mixed team with juniors also, people talk much more, they change ideas and they come to agreements. While if you have a group of seniors, they all know everything and they will go charge into 8 different directions.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And another thing is then there was a lot of friction in the company. First, why am I doing the legacy stuff with all the pain and they have fun? And second thing, they are having fun, but after they went on a greenfield project and after a year and a half, we have no clue what they implemented. And now we need to migrate, support, and migrate all the clients on it. And we don't know how, and we are afraid.
Yep.
So it created all the negative effects. So cross-pollinating new and old technologies is earlier is, I think, very important.
+1, we agree.
We certainly do. We certainly do.
Yeah, because imagine what the cultural message is if you're still working on the legacy and you didn't get put on the new fun stuff. What does that tell the people who are now on the legacy? As soon as that system turns off, you're fired. I mean, like, what's the end game for them, right? It's like, and that's not lean thinking. That's not respect for people. That's creating 2 classes of citizens inside our development organization. Yeah. That's a disaster.
Yeah.
One of our big
so
rules.
Simple technical decision. Let's put, this is very important. Let's put our best developers, seniors on it. Actually created a cultural issue.
Absolutely. Yeah, we don't call that one out so explicitly in the talk, but we have now. So there you go. But that's exactly what we're trying to avoid, is the second class citizen of I'm stuck on legacy and I'm going to get fired as soon as this thing gets decommissioned. So I'm going to drag my feet.
Or even if I'm not fired, I don't know anything about the new one. So how can I be productive?
Yeah.
Right, it is getting towards my dinner time here. I don't know if it's getting towards breakfast time or work time over there, but I'm literally